Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Real World Productivity Podcast. The title of today's interview is Choose Your Own Adventure. My name is Adam Moody, and today I'm talking with Leanna McGrath about her background in the startup world, the transition to coaching, and the role that productivity has played in all of this. We're going to be covering a lot of areas that I think can help you, so stay tuned and let's get going. First off, welcome, Leanna. Thanks for getting here. It's been a few months with my moving and you having things going on, so I certainly appreciate you making the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam.
Good deal. Well, let's just jump right into it. My first question really is about your background and experience in terms of kind of productivity and organization, so that the online entrepreneurs in the audience can maybe understand a little bit more about who you are, where you're coming from, and how they can relate to you. So would you mind telling us just a little bit about yourself in terms of your background, education, and maybe experience in terms of, and kind of in light of productivity, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am currently a leadership and career coach. So I work with leaders of organizations, leaders within organizations, and I've been doing that for the last 9 months or so. And before that, I started out in higher education administration. So I was out in the Bay Area at San Jose State, got my master's degree in educational leadership. And then I was working in higher ed, and I met a couple of guys who were starting a company in a house in Austin, really focused on student involvement on college campuses. So kind of helping students have a great college experience. And that was what I was all about. That was why I was working in higher ed. So I decided to leave the university and join the tech startup world. So I joined about 9 months in. We were working out of a house in Austin. Whenever I joined, we got a second house. So we had 2 houses and built the company, moved it to Dallas in 2010, and then built the company up to about 55 employees. We sold it in 2015 to private equity, and then went through a merger. So I just transitioned out of that about 9 months ago. So that's kind of my background and
Gotcha.
what I can do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of maybe when you were going to school, did you have any direct courses on productivity or organization? I'm always curious about this with people and education.
I didn't. I in my undergrad and grad programs, we didn't have anything specifically focused on that. I think though, doing it. So when I was in grad school, for example, I was working full time. I had 2 graduate assistantships the first year, and then I worked full time the second year. When I was in undergrad, I had several different jobs, work studies and also worked off campus. And so I think that kind of organization and productivity came as a result of having to, find the time to do things. So it wasn't like I was formally trained in it, but the experience itself trained me for, doing that in the real world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I find that that's generally the case, is that, maybe somebody was like given a book in a course or something, but yeah, there's certainly no kind of productivity courses or how to do that, as opposed to leadership, which I think there's entire schools based around that.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's interesting. So the transition then from the school, I guess, environment and then into a startup, that I'm just curious, what kind of, I haven't done that. I haven't been in that kind of an environment. What was that like, working with, a handful of people in a garage?
It was so different and so much fun. I loved higher education, and actually our company served the higher education market. So it's a market I'm really passionate about, and and helping students. I just think it's important for our world to have students have great college experiences, become civically engaged, become involved on campus so they can go out and make a difference in the world. And so I was really excited about doing that on a college campus, but I think the challenge that I had with working in higher ed was just kind of the bureaucracy. I mean, I worked for a state institution in California, and then I was in Miami working in an institution there, private institution, but just things took a little bit longer. There were lots of committees and things like that. So I remember actually when I was in the house in Austin and I sat down with a developer and we were working on a new project, and I kind of he was just asking me a bunch of questions, how do you see this happening, or what should this look like? And I just gave him all these ideas and we just brainstormed. And then the next day he brought me a prototype and I was like, whoa, how did this happen? What committee signed off on this? You know, it was just so different, the pace of things. And I think that was really exciting to me, that we could make such a difference so quickly without having to go through, you know, a lot of red tape or approvals and things like that. So that was really, I would say, the biggest difference and the most fun, you know, the most fun thing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. No, that sounds good. And I do understand that part. In a small group, being able to really iterate or go through ideas quickly and not ask for permission is really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess then what's the flip side then? So while you guys were still really small in terms of, you know, do you see things now looking back where like, oh man, you know, this really, you know, slowed us down, or, you know, if we would have had this kind of a structure, it would have been better. Can you relate to that at all? Or do you think like the startup mode is like just the way to go?
I would say two things about that. One is I think, you know, as we grew, obviously, as any company with scale, you're steering a different boat. That's how I kind of think about it. Whenever we were small and we had just a handful of clients and they would have a request, we were like, yeah, let's do it, you know, and whenever we could just implement it, and it only affected, you know, it's a SaaS company, so any change we made affected everybody, but you know, which was great because we could do an improvement and everybody would get that improvement. So that was great, but it was like, you know, driving a speedboat. Whenever we started getting, you know, hundreds and hundreds of campuses on board, it was a little bit more challenging because we would make a change and then we would get someone at another, you know, client campus calling us and saying, I don't like that change. You know, we don't want that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know, and so it really kind of taught us to be a little bit more disciplined in looking at, for any change, you know, kind of, we use the litmus test of, does it, is this going to make a positive impact for at least 80% of our campuses? And so, you know, that was kind of how we would gauge what updates we made and things like that. But yeah, I would say, you know, it also, if we made a change before, it was like, call up 10 people and tell them about it. And then, you know, it was like, whenever you started to make changes in the software later on, or in processes or anything, it was training the internal team and then training your customers. And it was just, you know, it just took a little bit longer. So I kind of equate that with like, you know, just, it started to get to be a bigger boat and there was a bigger wake, you know, because it just impacted more people. So well, I think,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I think that's something that we definitely learned as we grew. I think the other thing, that we learned that was really important to learn was there are always so many opportunities and rabbit holes to go down, that we, you know, we learned that it was really important to stay focused on our core mission. And, you know, I think that in terms of productivity, in terms of building a successful company, that's a huge, very, very hugely important factor, is to stay connected. And honestly, sometimes you have to kind of put your head down and ignore all the rest, because we had so many cool opportunities and so many cool things we could have done. You know, we looked into other markets, we looked into all kinds of affiliate partnerships and things like that. And at the end of the day, you know, we had to always come back to the question, how does this impact our core mission? Does this get us closer, or is it going to be a distraction? And most of the time it was, you know, it was a distraction. And so we would have to really have the discipline to cut out anything that didn't drive us closer to our core mission.
Well, this hits really close to home for me. I'm going through with the business I'm part owner of right now. We're going through and really defining a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, how did you guys do this? Because focus is so important. I think there's a whole nother subject of like what I guess I would say nowadays, but it's never going to stop, where there's more distractions, and the ability to stay focused is, I think, even more highly valued now. But without just raw discipline, like what kind of things did you guys actually do to make sure that you stayed focused on your core mission?
Well, I'm not going to say we did it perfectly, because there were certainly times where we would try something out and realize we had just wasted a bunch of time. I don't know that anyone does it perfectly, but I think, you know, you start to learn over time, and after those hard learned lessons of, you know, time wasted where you could have been doing something else, then, you know, you learn, hey, you know, kind of what to focus on and what not to focus on. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so I think that's good litmus test question to ask. If we say yes to this, what are we going to have to cut? Because I think in the startup world, we always think we can do everything, and we're like, no, we'll just add more, it'll be fine, and we'll just make it all happen. We're all really hard workers, we'll just work more. But at the end of the day, you can only do so much, and your customers can only understand so much, or take in so much, and that kind of thing. So I think it was really just again, being pretty clear on what's our core mission, who are we trying to serve, like who are the most important people that we're serving right now, and what do we want to do for them? What's our purpose? Why are we here? Why did we create this company in the first place? And where do we want to take it? And really just kind of bringing it back to that. I think it's obviously not, so now I'm solopreneuring at the moment. And that's a lot different than whenever you have a group of people who can kind of keep each other in check, right? And so it both of them have pros and cons, but I think in the entrepreneur world, whenever you've got a team of people, you're going to have some people who are like really passionate about this idea and want to go down this rabbit hole because something they're really interested in. And then we've got other people who are going to, fight against that. So I think that friction and that tension is really good because it helps you to really vet everything before just jumping into something.
Definitely. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of topics there. I'm going to do my best to also stay focused because there's so many good things to talk about. But I'm going to skip ahead because I actually had this written down. This is one of the last questions I wanted to ask you, but I think it's really pertains to what we're discussing. So what have you found then to be the biggest challenge in terms of staying focused now that you're working for yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. It can be a challenge for sure, because I think, it's a lot easier to just follow the things that, feel good to me rather than having like someone else to bounce that off of. So I think I still, I still have lots of friends from my startup experience. So sometimes I'll call them up and, and they're all kind of onto their next startup. So we'll kind of use each other. So I think having those, networks and support groups to kind of run ideas by sometimes can be really helpful. But for me, kind of, I think everybody approaches productivity a little bit different, and different things are going to work for them. For me personally, it's really asking myself, who am I serving? What am I trying to do for them? What's my purpose? And then aligning everything I do with that. So, when I wake up in the morning, it's, like looking at my day. I always look at my day. I always have everything mapped out on my calendar of how I'm going to spend my day. And then I just kind of, look and see, like, is this thing that I'm going to do, like, how much closer am I going to get to my purpose? Is this in a different direction? And if so, I might deprioritize it and move something else. Is there something else I need to do today that's going to get me closer than this other thing that I was thinking about doing? So, I think it's just kind of having the discipline to keep asking yourself that question, and keep like looking at things and really scrutinizing, like, how am I spending my time, and making a conscious choice about how we spend our time and how much closer it gets us to our mission and purpose.
Well, it makes sense to me. I'm 100% on board. I'm just curious, like, tactically wise, is this something that you do this like once a week, once a month to quarter? Do you have reminders? I'm just curious for other people. I do agree with you. Everyone does it differently, but how do you go about making sure that you actually do this stuff?
Yeah. So I'd love to say that I do it every morning. That's the goal.
Aim high.
Right. Meditate and then do this. Yes. But I would say probably on the days where I've got a lot of things scheduled, those are probably the days that I'm a little bit less in tune with it, where I'm kind of going through all the things that I've got on my calendar. I really try to be especially intentional about it on work days, like days where I'm doing project work and things like that. So I will literally, write on my whiteboard, like, what's the one thing I need to do today? And that's kind of a good test for me, because it's like, let's cut all the other stuff away, because I've got a notebook with, I'm old school in terms of writing down my task list. So I have to write it with a box and like physically check it off. And so, but there are a million things in that notebook, and I could do, I could spend all day checking things off and not be as close, like a whole lot closer as I would be if I do the one most important thing. So yeah, just kind of asking that question. And then I think the other thing for me that I always try to do is just being present and if I do find myself off track, if I do find myself down a, Google search rabbit hole, research rabbit hole, cat video, whatever it might be, just checking in with myself and saying, is this how I want to be spending my time right now? Like, because I think if I'm making a conscious decision to say, yes, like this research is important and this is going to get me closer to my goals, then great, then I'm on track. And if not, then the next question becomes, all right, well, how should I be spending my time instead? And then I can make that choice. But I think it's just about kind of making the choice of how we spend our time. And so that's kind of, for me, that's just what I try to do as a reminder to myself, just to kind of be present and check in with myself of, what am I doing right now? And how is it moving me closer to my, achieving my goals?
Definitely. No, I totally agree. And that morning kind of review and scheduling is something I definitely do. And the non-work days, I'll say, whether it's vacation or travel, like those have been challenging for me. But I found that if I just keep some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Not schedule, but just keep that routine of checking in with myself. Yeah. And it's like, it could be literally 1 minute, but just taking that minute and being like, did I schedule a call today? Do I have something I absolutely have to do? And just really building that habit muscle for that has just been so valuable for me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I would also say that the other thing is just kind of staying in a high vibe zone. So, listening to podcasts, reading, just taking a little bit of time. I love listening to those podcasts that really kind of keep me in the zone or remind me there are other people out there doing what I'm doing. There are other people out there, who are thinking about these things and where I learn something to maybe apply. I just love that. And that kind of keeps me in that, in the ability to kind of keep up my routine and keep the discipline, to check in with myself and stay self-aware about how I'm spending my time.
Definitely. Well, I'm going to circle back. Hopefully this doesn't end up being too weird time, like chronologically. But I was also curious because we started with talking about startup growth and then kind of segueing. But with the growth, how did you handle like the change growing from, I might have this wrong, but I thought you said like it was 9 or 10 people and then grew to over 50. Mm-hmm. So how did you grow with like, as far as, obviously productivity, but organization and management in terms of, that's a big change to have a 5 to 6 time growth in terms of people to deal with. Yeah,
that was a really important lesson. And that's actually where I focus a lot of my coaching on is in that growth phase, in working with folks there, because it's one thing whenever you're having to manage your own productivity. It's a totally another, and a whole nother thing whenever you're managing the productivity of a team and making sure that like, not only do you get your stuff done, but everybody around you gets their stuff done too. And so, again, I think it's making sure that everybody's clear about the mission and vision and purpose and aligned with that and having conversations about it. And honestly, and when I'm saying mission, vision, and purpose, I'm not saying like the thing that you write on the wall, not that that's not important, but I think just talking about, why are we here? Like talking about the customers constantly and the impact that you're having on them and, the impact that you're having in the world. I think that really, especially the people that you attract early on, in the first maybe 20 or so people, it's really kind of repeating that and talking about that on a regular basis, I think keeps everybody in that high vibe zone and really keeps people wanting to be productive and wanting to get things done for the company. Because obviously as an entrepreneur, you don't have time to like stand over people and make sure they get things done. So it's, how do we make sure that everybody's on the same page to and knows which direction we're going and buys into that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I think that that's really important at every stage of growth.
How would you actually implement that? Because I do get that question a lot. I'm curious. I've managed at small teams, but I'm curious how you do that in terms of would you do like weekly check-in, kind of have like a stand-up a couple times a week, or would it be just something different?
I think it depends on the team, honestly. Mm-hmm. I think it depends on the individuals. It depends on how, at what point you are in your growth. One of the things that we did, we had, when we were in the houses, we had team lunch every week and we would just do updates, in what's going on, what's the team developing, what sales running into, what are our customers saying, what kinds of things do we need for marketing, and just kind of going through it together as a team. As you grow, that dynamic changes, of course. So, once we moved into an office and we had a bigger team, we started doing it bi-weekly, and it was a little bit more like updates, and then also a lot of times, feedback kind of a thing. So I think just keeping everybody on the same page, one of the most important things that I would say in terms of growth is communication. And one of the books I always recommend to leaders is the book Crucial Conversations, because there's just, I just think constant communication, deciding what level of transparency you're going to have with the team, and then communicating that and honoring that on an ongoing basis, is just really, really important. But honestly, the open communication and the two-way feedback is going to be probably the most crucial thing, in my opinion, as you're growing, so that you can understand as a leader, how are we impacting the organization? How's our team feeling about where we're at, and how excited are they about what we're doing? And the team can let you know how you're doing as a leader, and actually I'm not really that clear anymore. I used to be, and I'm not. Okay, great. Let's figure out what we need to do there. So I think it's just an ongoing conversation amongst the team.
Good deal. And is that something you help teams with, as far as like, okay, yeah, because I've found communication to be so critical. This is like Captain Obvious speaking, but it's so important, and it's so obviously it's overlooked sometimes. It's just it's another meeting, and it's like, yes, meetings can be awful, but it's also people have to talk. You've got to communicate. So.
Yeah. Well, I think whenever you're small, you just kind of assume like everybody was in the conversation. You don't have to like repeat it again. But then as you grow, not everybody's going to be in every conversation. It's going to be really important to document and share out, and decide when you want two-way feedback, what you want that on, how you're going to conduct it, and that kind of a thing. It's just being a little bit more intentional as you grow, of making sure that you're sharing information and opening lines of communication and asking for feedback. That's something, whenever you're small, like you're constantly giving each other feedback usually, right? Like you're challenging each other, you're telling someone when they messed up, they're telling you when you messed up. But as you start growing, that doesn't always naturally happen without kind of starting to put to put some structures in place or ask for it. So I think just continuing to focus on it and be intentional about what what kind of environment you want to create and how you want to communicate with your team is really important.
Definitely. Well, time flies. I've got to wrap it up here with like one more question, but this is good because whoever's listening, Leanna will be back, assuming she'll actually come back. So we touched on a lot of really good subjects today. So you recommended, tell me if I got the name right, Crucial Connections?
Crucial
Conversations. That's right.
Yes.
So I've got that written down, and I'll have the link in the show notes for everyone. But what one book do you recommend, or I'll let you off the hook, what 1 to 3 books do you recommend the most to people of anything goes?
Yeah. So I would say I find myself constantly recommending Crucial Conversations to Leaders. I'm constantly recommending You're a Badass by Jen Sincero, especially to women, but really to anyone. And that's just really about connecting with your purpose and moving forward in the directions of your dreams. It's just like, it's when I say high vibe, staying in that mindset, that's something that like, if I'm starting to feel demotivated or anything like that, I'll just listen to it. I love audiobooks where the author reads the book because I feel like they're reading it to me. And so I love that one, an audiobook. The other kind of practical one in terms of productivity is 168 hours. So there are 168 hours in a week, and it's by Laura Vanderkam, I think her name is. And it is a really great book in terms of creating awareness around how you spend your time. And so I really enjoyed that one for productivity specifically.
Awesome. Well, I have all of these in the show notes for everybody. I'm actually looking forward to a couple of these, especially Crucial Conversations. I haven't heard of that, and that's something I need to personally work on. So I'll be doing a book review of that soon. So first of all, thank you so much for the interview. I really appreciate you sharing all the information. Like I said, we'd love to have you back on here. But where can people go to find out some more about you and what you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to my website, www.coachleanna.com. That has all my contact info, a little bit about me, and some of my different services and programs. You'll find that all there, or you can also find me on LinkedIn, Leanna McGrath.
Awesome. Thank you, Leanna.
All right. Thanks so much, Adam. It's fun.
And thanks to you for listening to this podcast episode today. It can be really beneficial to hear about how others approach productivity, organization, and optimizing their business and life. And if you're interested in taking your productivity and efficiency up a few notches, head to www.productivity.academy/start. You'll find my Productivity Academy guidebook, which I recommend for all listeners who want to improve their lives and know that there are better ways to getting where they want to go. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.